death. There's no coming back from it. Or is there? Turns out a lot of people have faked their own deaths. For some it was a means of avoiding prosecution for a crime, or even real-life death. But for some it was just a bit of fun. For example, there was the Austrian composer Gulda, who in 1999 staged his own death, later reappearing at a concert dedicated to his legacy. He really did die 1 year later at the age of 69, and predictably almost no one believed it. That's the problem with faking your own death. You can only do it once. So if you're going to do it, you might as well go all the way. And one person who went all the way was Jerry Balasok, otherwise known as Mr. X. He was a pro wrestler in the American South, and that's actually the least interesting thing about him. Despite having a large frame, he was primarily a jobber, meaning he was hired to lose matches and make his opponents look good. It's a tough way to make a living, and things got even more tough in 1977, when Jerry was involved in a horrific motorcycle accident. Luckily he didn't die, and as it would turn out, Mr. X would not die easily, but it did kill his wrestling career, leaving him with a bad hip. So he did what any man would when out of a job. He began forging checks. It's the kind of crime you can only do for so long before being found out. Sooner or later, bad checks lead back to the person who wrote them. So in 1977, Jerry Balasok was indicted on 13 counts of fraud. And considering he was facing 10 years in prison per count, he decided to go on the run and live as a fugitive. Hard to blame him. Life on the run is better than 130 years in jail. And joining him was Deborah Kindred, the married woman Balasok had been having an affair with. So they took her young son, stole her cousin's birth certificate and fled to Puerto Rico. There he began using the name on the birth certificate, marrying Deborah and scamming his way into employment. They bounced around the Caribbean before returning to mainland America, where he lied his way into an aerospace engineering job with Boeing. But no matter where they went, they knew the FBI would eventually follow. So to get around this, Jerry conceived of a way to con investigators into thinking he was dead. The opportunity to do so came with an international tragedy. In 1978, almost 1,000 people died in what's known as the Jonestown Massacre. Part mass suicide, part mass murder. It unfolded when a cult leader ordered his followers to consume cyanide. Some refused and were injected against their will. When news of the tragedy broke, images of corpses blanketing the grounds of their compound shocked the world, and it was in these images that Jerry Balasok found hope. At his suggestion, Balasok's mother approached the FBI, claiming he and Deborah died in Jonestown. As proof, she brought a photo showing two victims who somewhat resembled them. The FBI at first did not believe her, and since many of the corpses were unable to be identified, there was no proof, but the length she went to sold the lie. In one of the most petty moves known to man, she claimed one of said unidentified bodies, buried it as her son Jerry, and on the headstone had the words "Damn the State Department" inscribed. Several years passed and the FBI actually began to believe Jerry and Deborah might be dead. With no luck in the manhunt, all charges against them were dropped in 1984. Meanwhile, Jerry Balasok had scammed his way into Seattle's real estate business, earning a fortune and buying a hotel, but he just couldn't stay out of trouble. In 1988, he was arrested for arson, having set fire to his own hotel. In 1989, he was arrested for attempted murder, and in 1990, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Someone else who faked their own death was Marcus Schrenker, a highly successful financial advisor. In the lead up to the 2008 crash, he was living at large, owning multiple houses, cars and his own plane. But when the global economy took a nosedive, he was exposed for being a naughty boy. On top of misappropriating his clients' funds, his wife was divorcing him for having an affair, creating the perfect storm of financial trouble. So like every man in that position, he had two options: either rage out and kill everybody in sight, or fake his own death and move to North Korea. He chose the latter. Going into 2009, he was facing 8 lawsuits from angry former clients. So one morning he took his plane for a flight, then having flown across the border to Alabama, made a distress call, claiming his windshield had shattered and cut him badly. Before help could arrive though, he put his plane on autopilot and parachuted to safety. Rescue teams eventually found the wreckage, but there was no sign of Schrenker. Yet as even a child could tell you, it's not that easy to evade justice. Otherwise every criminal would just pretend to be dead. For police it was a simple case of tracing his steps up until this flight. Soon they found a motorcycle he'd used to flee the scene, and just 2 days later found him hiding in a tent, severely dehydrated. In a matter of months he'd gone from being a millionaire to a loser dying in a tent. That same day he was charged with 11 crimes, had his bail set at $4 million, was facing decades in prison, and had former clients trying to get $20 million out of him. So in other words, he might as well have stayed in the plane. Some people even fake their deaths for no apparent reason. They aren't in legal or personal trouble and have ordinary safe lives. It's like they just wake up one day and decide to do the funniest thing ever. But even among these people, William Gropey stands out. Not only did he fake his own murder, but he actually framed himself for the crime. Until not too long ago, he was a respected entertainment lawyer in Nashville, but after getting fired in 2008, he decided to make a change. A big change. On the 19th of November, he just up and left, abandoning his car, phone and credit cards in various areas of his neighborhood. To investigators, it was as if he'd simply vanished into thin air, but when they found out he had a $1 million life insurance policy, it began to make sense. Then one day they received a strange phone call. From an anonymous source, a muffled voice claimed responsibility for the murder of William Gropey. Naturally, they did not believe this, and soon the voice was positively matched to Gropey's, so murder was off the table. In fact, he was hiding in Montana, which in his defense might actually be worse than really being dead. The most amazing part of the story was his criminal penalty. On finally being arrested, all he got was probation. So not only was him faking his own death pretty pointless, the entire police operation to find him was also. And there are many more people who faked their deaths, like the nun Joan of Leeds, who in the early 1300s did so to get out of her vows. Or there was the Spanish spy who faked a heart attack after getting exposed for stealing government funds. But most impressive are the people who got away with it. By definition, it's impossible for us to know how many living people have faked their own death, but that doesn't mean it's not an option. So remember that. It's never too late to fake your death.